Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Real Talk, and thank you so much for joining us. And thank you if you joined us in our past weeks and are coming back. We're super excited to have you here. And we have Matt with us again today. So thank you, Matt, for joining us for today's talk about product photography, which I'm super excited about. So as I always like to start the chat, let me know where you're joining us from. Leave us a comment in the chat, and please chat with us throughout as well. I'm all the way in Ottawa, and Matt, you are in BC. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, Victoria, BC.
Yeah, how's it there today? Is the weather nice? Does it look like snowy? No snow?
It's still it's morning, so the sun hasn't even really come up yet as far as I can tell. But yeah, it's a little bit cloudy, so it's regular Victoria weather.
Yeah, the nice cloudy winters, I find, in BC. Oh, we
Totally.
have Latvia, Milwaukee. Awesome. So cool. So cool. So if you've joined us in the past, you know what Real Talk is, but for anyone who's brand new, Real Talk is a show where we go over anything to do with your business or your side hustle, whether it's marketing tips or ways to 10x your business. So each week is always changing, as you know, so that's kind of exciting. Join each week and you'll definitely be learning a completely new topic, which is fun. So before we hop into kind of the outline of today, what we're going to be chatting about, Matt, as always, I'd like to get you started with letting people know why you're worth listening to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked with merchants over the past year, start and build their businesses. I've started and run multiple large Instagram meme accounts and learned how to grow organically on the platform. And I've also run my own dropshipping store for 2 years.
Yeah, so awesome. So he has a lot of really great experience with drop shipping, both himself and also working with merchants, which is super cool. And I've been with Shopify and Oberlo for over 5 years now. So I've seen a variety of different shops, what's been successful, what hasn't been, what kind of mistakes a lot of merchants are making, and what kind of things other merchants are doing that make them unique. So yeah, I think we both have a lot of experience to share in terms of drop shipping. And let's go over the outline for today. So like I had mentioned last week, we're going to be talking about product photography, which I think both of us are super excited about. We both really like photography, so I think it'll be a really fun chat today. So when it comes to product photography, or even just photography on your site in general, it's always something we highly recommend merchants do and invest in, just because that's what's really going to make you unique, and it's going to make your brand and site look overall like more cohesive. So that's why I thought it was a really great topic to chat about today. So after we talk about the main topic for today, we're going to go into a hot tip section, which is some kind of a marketing tip or success story or whatever it is we've been loving. And then a toolbox section, which is some kind of a resource. So whether an app, podcast, tool, whatever it might be that you guys might want to check out too. So that's kind of the outline. Like I always say, leave questions in the chat. Let us know if there's anything you're wondering about or anything you need clarification on. And as a reminder, it is recorded, so feel free to rewatch it later if you want to take notes or anything like that. So Matt, why don't you hop us right into the topic for today, which is product photography, and give us a quick little intro.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be covering product photography. Whether you're someone who's creative or has an interest in photography, or somebody who isn't creative but just wants to find a way to implement product photography, we'll cover tips that should help anyone at any skill level. Hopefully there will be a little something for everyone, but if you're a photography wizard, please drop your tips in the chat. It's very much appreciated as we go. So as a quick outline, we're going to talk about the importance of product photography for e-commerce. Then we'll chat about some options that you can explore for taking your product photography to the next level, some tools and resources that you can use, as well as ways that you can outsource the photography if it's not for you. So let's just hop into it.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note is that I know not everyone's super creative or, likes taking that creative route, which is totally fine too. So we're going to try and provide tips that are good for anyone, no matter your skill level or whatever your passions are. Hopefully you can take at least one or two things away from it. And Meregai, sorry if I totally said that name wrong, but best free high resolution background remover. We've got some tips for you later, so just stay tuned because we've got lots of tools and resources, and there actually is one that we'll be sharing for that. So let's get started. So the first thing, as Matt had mentioned, is the importance of product photography. So I wanted to kind of start with that initially. just so that way we could kind of get you all in the right mindset before actually hopping in and taking those photos. So, maybe my perspective is a little bit biased when it comes to this, but I strongly believe that having a really good design site and branding can definitely play a crucial role in creating a trustworthy store for your customers and making something unique that your customers feel comfortable purchasing from, especially with drop shipping where all of your, all other competing merchants are using the same photos. You really want to try and stand out, and photography is a really, really great way to do that online. So it's a way, like I said, to portray kind of the lifestyle or the community that you want to create around your brand, something that gives your customers something that they can like connect with, that feeling of who your brand is. It can invoke emotions, and it really gives your customers a sense of how they would feel having your product. So there's some huge benefits to taking your own photos or having someone else take your own photos, but making them unique to you. So, I mean, along with kind of the setting yourself apart and making yourself look unique, there are some other things that you'll want to consider as well that is important in taking your own photography. So, for example, like I said, all other drop shippers selling that same product will be using that same photo. So it's like a customer goes from one site to the next, it's all going to be the same photo. And again, it's not going to make you look unique, and it's going to make you look like a drop shipping site because maybe they've seen that photo before. The next thing is, this can happen from time to time, is suppliers on AliExpress may, for example, like I've seen this with clothing a lot, they'll take a photo of a model wearing this clothing piece, and then the supplier actually just makes that clothing piece like a replica. But those photos, they actually don't own those photos sometimes. So I just would hate for any of you guys to get stuck with using those photos on your site and then having any issues. Again, it doesn't come up often, but I see it specifically with clothing, is sometimes suppliers will just take photos from other big brands and just use them and then create a product that's like a replica product. So again, it helps you just alleviate that possibility of having copyright photos just in case. But again, you can always chat with the supplier a bit more about that. And lastly is, I don't know if some of you use the reverse image search tool on Google, but in Google, you can just plug in an image and see what other sites or, links come up with that exact same image. So it's a way that, maybe sneaky customers can see like, oh, there's 10 other sites selling this exact same product. Which one's selling it cheaper? Maybe I'll go there. So just to avoid all of that, having your own images, because it's unique to you, no one else is going to have those same things unless somebody copies you, which maybe is a good thing. Maybe that means you're doing really well. So all in all, there are a lot of benefits to taking your own product photography. So yeah, I mean, if you are interested in learning more, let's go over how to actually get started on taking those photos, as well as some tools and resources you can use. So Matt, why don't you give us the first getting started tip?
Absolutely. So if you plan on taking your own photos, the obviously the first thing that you're going to need to do is order those products. So that's why it's really good to kind of narrow down your niche and not have a whole bunch of different products in your store. Because if you have to order a product, or sorry, if you have to order one of each of those products, it's going to be a lot of money, right? So the other thing that you can do though is, once you have that item in your hand after you've taken photos of it, you can do different things. So you don't necessarily have to just throw it away or anything like that. Like, you can ship out the product as an order, right? It's still the same product that you're selling. The other thing that you can do is you can reach out to different influencers and you can give them the product and have them market your product. And it's a way of almost, in a sense, free advertising. You have to pay for the product, obviously, but you're buying it to take the photos. So it's kind of like a nice little workaround for that. So there's a couple of different options that you can do with these products once you've ordered them. But the most essential thing is that you order some of them yourself and take the pictures yourself.
Yeah, totally. So that's just something always that's great to keep in back of mind, is don't stress about ordering all these products. There's some other things you can still do with them. So it is an investment that you can kind of shift around in other ways. And then my next one was, it's also a really great opportunity to get familiar with the process of how their shipping works and how the item will actually look when it arrives, the packaging, the quality. So think of it as a really great way to yes, you'll have the item to take photos of, but you can also make sure that the item is a quality item that you feel comfortable selling to your customers. So I just wanted to put that out there as well too. So, all right, you're next, Matt. What's the next tip?
Absolutely. Like I said, sending them to influencers is a great idea. Like if you order the product yourself, you can just send it out to them, reach out to them on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, have them do a video or like some sort of a post where their account will make it go viral. It's a really good way to get your reach out there. So that's definitely something that you can do. The one thing about product photography is you do need a camera. And that's usually the first thing that people think of. I got to buy this expensive DSLR or something like that. But you really don't. You can just take photos with your smartphone. A lot of people do it. The phones, the cameras on smartphones now are really good. So I think Carissa has some tips that we can go into for the next part as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and like you said, it's don't stress about not having a super fancy camera. I think that's super important to stress during this, is you can totally use a smartphone. And like Matt said, we'll chat a little bit later about some different ways you can kind of optimize that process. And I'm so sorry, is it Iggy? Is that how you pronounce it? I'm so sorry if I pronounced your name wrong earlier in the chat. So thank you for correcting me there in the chat. And Moneycom, yes, awesome. We're definitely super excited to chat about photos, and it's exciting to see you back here because I recognize you from past chats. Okay, so the next tip before I get way too off track is before beginning to take your own photos, one thing I want you to all think about is the branding of your site. So it's easy to get the products and be like, cool, I'm just going to take all these photos, let's go. But take a moment just to take a step back and really think about the brand you want to create for your website just before you hop in and start taking photos. So for example, maybe you're selling clothing products. It's just an easy example to bring up. Maybe you're selling streetwear type clothing. Those photos are going to be completely different than photos you might use for someone selling like boho summer flowy dress type clothing. One of them might be very like light and airy and summery. The other one might be more like moody and dark, and it's going to vary quite a bit. And maybe do you want to take lifestyle photos, or do you just want to take photos of the product itself? It's just something to keep in mind before you kind of hop into it, because you do kind of want all of your images to be cohesive. So before you get started, just take a little bit of time to think about the brand and kind of the feel you want to create on your site. So even if we're thinking about, for example, if you're selling practical items, so maybe you don't want to take lifestyle type photos, but you're selling a kitchen utensil and you're showing how it's used, then those photos might be very much more focused on showing how the product works itself, something in really good lighting. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Definitely think about your items, your brand, and kind of the mood you want to create before you get started. So other than having the items ordered, having some kind of a camera, and then having a game plan of the creative content you want to create, that's kind of all the basics of what you need just to get started. So I think it's a good time now to hop into some tools and resources which should help you now get started, that you have a good idea of what you want to create. So once your order arrives, you'll definitely, like I said, want to get started taking some photos. If you have no clue what makes a good product photo or how to get started, these are the basic tips here, which again should give you a good foundation to go with. So Matt, what's our first tip for under the tools and resources section?
Yeah, so the first thing you want to make sure you have is a cohesive background for all your product photos. So what that does is it kind of helps make all your products look uniform, and it kind of helps add to your branding. So the overall branding of your website, and it just kind of helps make the products look uniform and the same.
Yeah, totally. Like there's a lot of times when you can see someone taking product photos, and some of them have a white background, some of them are maybe on a desk, some of them are whatever, and it just kind of makes it look a little bit messy. So again, that kind of goes back to thinking about making it all cohesive. So definitely just think about your background for sure. That's a huge thing. And then the sizing of your photos too. So anyways, we'll get into that after. But also, make sure your images are very clear and in good lighting too. So, don't use, for example, fluorescent lighting. Like natural lighting is such a great tip that all of us should have access to. If you have a window wherever you live, wait until some nice lights coming through, and that can be a really good tip for taking some really nice, clear product photography, so you don't get the weird yellow backgrounds or weird hues. Yeah, I think just in general, think about your lighting for sure before you start taking photos, and make sure you can see your product very clearly too. You don't want to take a picture of your product and then be like, I can't really tell how these different sections of the product work or where the buttons are or what it would actually look like. So just make sure, yeah, your product pictures are very clear. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the next thing that you want to do is you want to shoot your product from different angles. So it's not good to just have one specific, like just one photo for your product. You want to take it from multiple different angles. You want to show it in use. So you want to show the person, using the product itself, take a photo of it being in use. And it just kind of gives the customers a good idea of how it looks and how it's being used.
Totally. And the size of it too. So they can tell, like, is this product this big or is it this big? Sometimes it's hard to tell. So yeah, for sure, different angles is super key. My next tip would be using a tool like a photo light box. So what this does is essentially create like a seamless background behind your product when you're taking an image. And the great thing is you can actually get one of these on Amazon, or even AliExpress sells them for like 15 to 30 bucks. So they're not that expensive, just like a little box, probably yay big. But yeah, it's a great way if you're selling smaller products just to put them in there. That way your background's going to be cohesive for all of them. You're not going to see any weird seams or creases in whatever background you're using. And it's going to give you really good light. Like I said, it's only 15 or $30 usually for just a cheap one to help get you started. And we can also link you some of those. I just found some random ones on Amazon or AliExpress. So for sure, check that out if you want to just kind of step it up a little bit. And if you have smaller products that would fit within a light box.
Yeah, and if you don't want to use a light box and you want to get those white backgrounds, you can actually use a site. This is what we were talking about earlier. It's remove.bg. So you can just go to that website, throw your photo in there, and it'll help you remove the background from your images. Jessica had mentioned this tip in a previous episode, so we will link the blog post on how to remove the backgrounds in the chat right now.
Yeah, super great tip to use, especially if you do want to use those same images that your suppliers gave, but you want to make them unique to you. Then just, at least use that and cut out the backgrounds, or, use it for advertising, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one great thing about it is if you don't want to order your product photography or your products, you can actually use this website to just remove that background, so you don't actually have to spend the money to order the products.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Yeah, so lots of links in the chat. If you check those out, those will be all of our all of our tools and resources. And also, I think we had a question here from, yeah, sorry, Basic Alfred. I can see that we did answer it quickly in the chat, but I wanted to mention too, you asked if it was better to, order products from somewhere else other than AliExpress so you can get them faster. It really depends on your product too, because yes, there are some that take a while, but there are some items which will ship pretty quickly, especially if you have like a US supplier and maybe you're in the US, or even here in Canada. I had recently ordered a product and it came in like a week and a half or 2 weeks. So there definitely are some items you can get quicker. So just something to keep in mind. But if you are just getting started or you're kind of creating your brand, order your products and then take that next little period of time before you get your products to really start thinking about the branding and all of that, like we chatted about, and getting familiar with some of these tools in the meantime. And was there any other questions in the chat? I just want to make sure I address everyone before we hop on to the next one. Carolina, yes, having photos have the same background, important, super important, super important. Okay, so we talked about the light box, the background remover. The next tip, oh yeah, so next tip is an app that I wanted to suggest. So if you wanted to, using your phone to take photos, you can definitely use the basic camera that your phone comes with. You're still going to be able to take some really great photos. But if you wanted to step up that game just a little bit and have a bit more control over your camera settings on your phone, there actually are a lot of apps you can download directly to your phone, which do allow you to get more access to some of these features. So for example, an app that I love using, and I've been using at the moment, is an app from a shop called Moment. It's like a tongue twister there. So we'll link the app. I think it's only available on Apple, though, I do believe. They used to have an Android one, but trust me, there's plenty of apps you can use. Essentially, it allows you to adjust things like your frame rate when you're recording, especially if you're doing video. You can take photos in RAW, which essentially is like a larger, more flat profile, I guess, and you can kind of edit later. So you can take photos, for example, in RAW. You can have like control over your exposure, ISO, shutter speed, white balance, focus. Like there's so many things you can learn and dive into that, again, you don't need to do all these things, but if you wanted to dive in a little bit deeper and have more control while still just using your phone, you can use an app. That one I think I got is like $6 or $9 or something like that. So yeah, so it gives you a lot of the tools that a regular DSLR camera would come with. So yeah, we'll link that. And they also have a YouTube channel that I think explains how to use that app specifically, which is why I love that app. Again, I'm not sponsored or anything by that app. I just really like it. But yeah, lots of other apps you can use. And before I hopped onto the next one, I wanted to mention, along with the tip of using photo editing apps in general, there are tons of really great YouTube videos on taking product photography. So again, if you're kind of nervous, you don't know where to get started, you're not really sure how to set up your lighting, all of that, totally just check out YouTube. There's like so many videos and channels on product photography specifically you can check out. And like I said, no surprise here, but that app that I really like, that they do have a YouTube channel, and they don't just create apps, they create like a bunch of gear and things like that. So there's a bunch of videos on how to take product photography or just mobile photography, videography, everything, how to set up your phone. So check that out if you wanted a specific channel that I know has great tips, but again, there's so many you can check out. So yeah, Matt, what's the next tool and resource?
Of course. So along with the apps and the tools and the tips that we suggested, we also have an incredible Alberlo course from Ben, who is a commercial photographer, videographer, and content creator. You should all have access to this as well. So it goes a lot more depth into photography using your phone. And we actually have a link that we can share in chat as well for that if you want to take a look.
Yeah.
So yeah, and along with taking product photography for your product listings, you may also want to use the photos to create advertisements. So a free tool that you can use to create posters, ads, banners, etc. is Canva. And if you haven't heard of it, it's canva.com, and we'll include a link for that as well.
Yeah, so that's just a great tool to use if you wanted to, like you said, create some kind of ads or posters or banners, or you wanted to add graphics to your photos. Canva is a cool tool to use for that. Then they do have that free version. Okay, so the next one I wanted to suggest in terms of tips is, if it's something you are really interested in and you want to dive more deeper into product photography because it's just something that you, like I said, do have an actual interest in learning and it's exciting to you, you can take a lot of different courses on how to use the different softwares and programs that will allow you to 10x your game in terms of building your own content. So for example, if you wanted to dive into learning platforms like Photoshop, Lightroom, Premiere Pro for video content. I know that those platforms can seem really scary at first. There's so many like buttons to click and so many tools you can use and all of them. So if you did want to get started, trust me, it's a lot of fun once you do hop in. And there's a tutorial, like a guy who does all of these tutorials for Adobe, which I find his tutorials are super clear, super concise, and really, really, really easy to follow along with, especially if you've literally never opened up the software or platform before. So his name is Dan from Adobe, I think, but I'll link his site of where you can find all of his courses. So again, I took a few of his courses just because I was this past year learning Photoshop, Lightroom, all of that. And I just loved following along with him because he was super easy to follow along with and made me feel like I could actually learn the platform without getting too frustrated. And he does have some paid courses, but he also has a lot of free courses, which you can find even on YouTube too. So like the Photoshop one, for example, was a free one. It was like 3 hours long, which is quite long, but it gives you all the details you need. So yeah, Dan is great. I just saw that. Jasmine, yeah, love him. He's super awesome and makes it super easy to follow along. So Matt, what's our last tip and suggestion under the tools and resources section?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important to know where your images are going. So, for instance, if you upload them to your website versus social media, you're going to probably want to use different dimensions, different file sizes, stuff like that. Adding large files, large, high quality images to your website is probably going to slow it down a little bit. Whereas on Instagram, it doesn't really matter because they kind of handle that and they optimize it and compress it and stuff like that. So just make sure that you know where you're putting your files and make sure you're saving them in the right dimensions and file size.
Totally. And I guess that's important too. I just had kind of thought about this, but even taking them, whether you take a landscape photo
Totally.
or like, you know, when you're taking that, you got to think, okay, if I'm putting it as a slideshow image, I'm not going to take a photo this way and then have to crop it into this tiny little section. So yeah, important to think of where you want to use it, just so that way, when you do go to actually create it and upload it, you're all good to go and don't have to do any too much weird cropping for your photo. Yeah, so that's awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I guess that kind of wraps up the tools and resources section. Now, I wanted to include this other section on outsourcing because, like I said, product photography and photography in general is not going to be for everyone. And that's totally okay because you know what your strengths are and you know what your weaknesses are. And if it's not something you're interested in, then don't even worry about it. We've got some tools for what you can do to outsource as well, but still get that great result of having really nice product photos. So, what I was going to mention, let me see. Yeah, for anyone who fall into that category, let's go over some options. So sorry, Matt, you go ahead and give us our first outsourcing tip.
Absolutely. So you want to use a website called Burst. It's actually owned by Shopify. It has royalty-free images that you can use on your website, and you can access it right from the theme as well. So you can go to the website, or you can find some of the images in your theme as well. It's really good for crisp and clear photos. So they have really, really high quality photos that you can use on your website. And like I said, they're royalty-free, so you don't have to worry about any sort of DMCA or people getting upset that you're using other people's images. So we'll include a link for that as well in the chat.
Totally. And that's just great for like slideshow images or filler images or social media or whatever really you need. Again, other sites might be using them, but you can kind of play with them and even edit them in Canva. You could add more things to it and use it as like a background of some sort. So yeah, Burst is awesome and it's free to use. So my next outsourcing tip is think about social media platforms in terms of like Instagram and stuff, and they're full of creatives who are constantly showcasing their work, their photography, and there may be Instagrammers who are actually interested in taking product photos for you. So a lot of the times, especially if you find like kind of a smaller account, but they have really beautiful photos, it might be kind of a cool thing to reach out to them, say, hey, I'll send you you know, my product, would you mind taking some photos? You can keep the product as like a thank you, and then they'll take some really awesome photos for you in that style that they create, that aesthetic that they create. So definitely see if you can find some accounts that do have that aesthetic and that feel that you really like. It's something that they obviously love doing if they're posting all of these photos on social media with the style that you like. And yeah, I mean, some of them, like I said, they might take a free product. Most of them might actually probably will charge you like a certain amount to do it. But again, if you don't want to take the time to take those photos and you know somebody who takes like really, really nice photos, definitely reach out to them. It doesn't have to be someone who's like, that's the great thing about that's separate from reaching out to Instagrammers and influencers who have a big following is it doesn't matter if these accounts have a big following or not, because it's not like you're using them to advertise your product. You're literally asking them to help you with taking product photography content that you can use. So yeah, it doesn't matter if they have a big account, just see if they take some really beautiful photos that you want your business to align with. Yeah, so that's my tip is you could use that. And what's the last one there, Matt?
Yeah, so this is kind of like it's sort of like a secret. I wouldn't call it a secret, but it's one thing that a lot of new merchants, especially, don't realize that they can do is they can hire an expert through the Shopify Experts Marketplace. So there's plenty of brand photographers on there that you can hire, and all the experts on there are really good. So I definitely recommend reaching out to the experts. And it doesn't even have to be just for product photography. We're speaking about product photography today, so it's relevant. But yeah, they're great for everything. Like you can find a lot of stuff on there.
Totally. I mean, I think that kind of wraps up all of our tips for product photography, but overall, I know it can take a bit of work just to kind of come up with a game plan, have your setup, know how to take those photos. But once you learn and once you start taking those photos, it just becomes a bit more like second nature because you know exactly how to do it. So as your store grows, you'll have a whole plan and set up for how you take your photos, and it'll be much easier, especially if you're just getting started. But I do think it can make a really big difference on your website, and it is an investment that I think is worthwhile, especially if you've really narrowed down on which products you want to sell, and you know which ones are doing well. Then create that brand and build it from there. So yeah, that's kind of all of our tips for product photography. And like I said, let us know in the chat too if you have any more tips and suggestions. And those are just some basic ones to help get you started, or to help outsource if you don't want to get started, but also would like to optimize your website. So let's hop into the hot tip section of the toolbox section, like how we always finish the show, which is kind of ending it on some resources you can also check out, though our chat was full of resources, so I'm sure we'll keep you busy with those. But I was just going to say that, again, it's just a simple tip, but if you are feeling stuck, not knowing what kind of photos you want to take or how to style your photos, then definitely explore your competition or look on Instagram, Pinterest, like just look at places like that to get inspired before you start diving in. And yeah, I think those platforms, it's pretty obvious tip, but those ones are really great ones to get inspired. And what I always do personally is if I find photos I like, you can do that saved option on Instagram. So I'm always looking on Instagram, but I'll just save to a certain thing. And then once I have like a good amount of photos that I like the style and feel of, I'll go to my save section and then just kind of take a look at all of them and see what do all of these photos have in common? What is it that I like about these? Like, is it the lighting? Is it the colors? Is it the moods? Is it the lifestyle type of shot? Like, what is it I like? And then from there, that'll help me figure out and narrow down my game plan of what kind of photos I'd like to take. So, and again, you can do the same thing on Pinterest with creating a little board. And what's your hot tip?
Yeah, so with photography, there's if you're unfamiliar with photography, one of the most basic things that you can learn is the rule of thirds. So basically, what it is you want to separate all of your your image into 3 sections, and then align your subject matter into one of those 3 sections. So that's kind of like a basic of it. It's very prominent in art and photography and videography and stuff like that. So we actually have a link that is part of my toolbox as well that will include on how to learn the rule of thirds.
Yeah, totally. I think that's super important because you having a really good composition on your photos is something that will, like, you don't know why the rule of third works, but it makes a picture look really great. So picture, if you don't know what the rule of thirds is, like he said, it's those lines, but picture like 9 boxes, 9 squares, and all of those lines of those intersections. You kind of want your subject to fall within either one of the thirds or on the actual like line itself. I guess maybe I'm making it more confusing than it actually is, but Matt said he has a tip in the next section that you all can check out.
You were right on, Krista. That's exactly.
Okay. It's like, hopefully I'm not just making it way more confusing for everyone. Okay, cool. So the next one is toolbox. And this is just kind of something I've been liking lately, but if you are taking your own photos and you want to get a little bit more creative with your photography style, maybe it's not just like maybe you're not selling just like a product, which is like a kitchen tool and you're showing how to use it, but you want to take more like I said, like creative style photos. You can use things. Sorry, I don't know why my camera is like blurry right now, just as I'm about to show you something, but you can use different things like lens filters or crystals to put in front. So like literally I got this on AliExpress for like a couple dollars. I think it's meant to hang on like a chandelier even. It's not even meant for photography, but you can literally put it in front of your camera and take like, look at that, like weird, cool effects. Like, yes, that looks weird right now, but you can use different cool tools to take interesting photography, or you can even get filters for cameras too, even for iPhones. Like I just bought, again, like I told you, I'm obsessed with this site called Moment, but they have like lenses. You can add, yes, you can add them to DSLR cameras, but they have lots of lenses you can add right to your mobile phone too. So again, maybe that's diving a little bit more into being creative with your photos if you wanted. But yeah, a lot of, and again, on YouTube, you can just check it out and they'll have plenty of interesting kind of tools and resources you could use to take creative photography. So yeah, and what's the link you were going to mention, Matt, too, for your toolbox section?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, just one second. All right. So the link is we're gonna throw it in the chat as well, but it's digital-photography-school.com/rule-of-thirds. So it's a nice little link to kind of explain the rule of thirds, and it'll break it down really simple for you.
Cool. Yeah, I love that because, like we said, that'll help you think about, like, once you have the style and kind of idea of what you want to create, that'll just help to make sure your composition looks good. So just get familiar with the rule of thirds, no matter what. That'll help you a lot for sure. Cool. Okay, so that's our show, everyone. I hope that you found it helpful. Like I said, we had a lot of tools. They're all in the chat though, so when you rewatch it, you can always go back and click on those. But let us know in the chat what you like, what you didn't like, as always, what we can do better, or any future topics you would like us to chat about. Like I said, we're here for you guys. So let us know what you're interested in and what we can dive a little bit deeper into. Next week, actually, we're going to be chatting with Jessica, who has been on the couple past shows before, and a lot of you probably recognize her from our YouTube channel. But Jessica is going to be on, and we're going to be doing a Q&A session, actually. So we're going to be covering all the things of kind of the basics of dropshipping in 2021. So definitely join if you want to ask us questions. Keep some questions in the back of mind because we're going to be answering a lot in the chat as well. So have those questions ready and join in next week for the Q&A. But yeah, that's it. So we will see you next Monday. And thank you everyone again for joining us. Bye.
Bye.